You will never be enough for me, Evie. The words echoed through the obsidian throne room like thunder, each syllable a dagger plunged into the small Omega's trembling heart before King Alaric. Look at yourself. I need a warrior queen, not a library mouse who startles at her own thunder. He didn't even glance at her as he delivered the decree that would shatter two hearts. How could she possibly work beside him every day after this? The torrential rain beating against the Royal Archives' Gothic stained-glass windows created a melancholic symphony echoing through Ethelgard Keep's stone corridors. Each drop seemed to carry the tears Evelyn Blackthorne refused to shed. At 26, she had dedicated her entire life to the secrets within yellowed pages and time-worn spines. Her small hands, perpetually stained with iron gall ink, trembled as she arranged ancient manuscripts with a precision bordering on obsession. The scent of parchment and candle wax permeated her simple clothes, gray wool dresses her mother had sewn before dying, leaving her an orphan at 16. Evie had found refuge in the Royal Archives, where the silence was broken only by the whisper of pages turning and the occasional creak of old wood settling. For 5 long years, she had nursed a silent love that grew like ivy on the walls of her heart. Every morning, when King Alaric Thorne passed through the library corridors towards the War Council chamber, his firm steps echoed like drumbeats in her chest. He was impossible to ignore. Nearly 7 feet of muscle and authority, with hair as black as midnight and golden eyes that seemed to pierce through souls. His presence filled any space with the masculine scent of ozone and pine, a fragrance that made any Omega's inner wolf instinctively recognize absolute dominance. Yet, there was something more in their brief encounters. When King Alaric greeted her with a "Good morning, Miss Blackthorne," his voice carried a softness he reserved for no other subject. His golden eyes seemed to linger on her face for a second longer than protocol dictated. These crumbs of attention fed Evie's fantasy, until she could no longer bear the uncertainty. It was on a particularly stormy October afternoon that Evie made the decision that would change everything. Dressed in her only decent gown, a navy blue that accentuated her amber eyes, she headed for the main hall. Her bare feet slid across the cold stones, and she almost lost her courage 3 times before pushing open the double oak doors. The obsidian throne dominated the far end of the chamber like a somber altar. King Alaric stood there, studying military maps with an expression of fierce concentration. When he finally lifted his eyes and saw her, something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps even pleasure, before it morphed into a mask of regal courtesy. "Miss Blackthorne," he said, setting the maps aside. "What brings you here?" The words Evie had rehearsed 1,000 times dissolved in her throat. Instead of eloquence, all that emerged was a raw, desperate confession. "Your Majesty, I love you. I know I am unworthy, but these 5 years by your side..." Her voice faltered, yet she forced the words out. "I thought that perhaps, if you knew my feelings..." The silence that followed was deafening. Alaric watched her for a moment that stretched into an eternity, and then something terrible happened. He chuckled. It was not a cruel laugh, but something far worse. A weary sigh, edged with dismissive amusement, as if bothered by a triviality. "Evie," he said, and there was a frigidness in his voice she had never heard before. "You will never be enough for me. Look at yourself." His golden eyes swept over her from head to toe, cataloging every imperfection. "I require a warrior queen to hold the northern borders, not a library mouse who startles at her own thunder. You are an employee, and I am the king. Return to your books and forget this conversation ever took place." Alaric turned to resume his study of the maps, assuming the matter was closed. What he did not see was that Evie did not weep. Humiliation scorched the tears before they could fall. Something within her solidified in that moment, not into hatred, but into a frigid, crystalline understanding of her true place in the world. She exited the obsidian throne room, not as the rejected Omega, but as a woman who had just realized the idol she had worshipped had feet of clay. In the days that followed, Ethelgard Keep continued its usual routine, but for Evie, everything had irrevocably changed. She buried herself deeper into the royal archives, channeling her profound pain into a cold, calculating obsession. She was not merely organizing books. She was meticulously deciphering secrets that had slumbered for centuries between dusty pages. The Lysander Codex had defied scholars for 300 years. It was a collection of ancient territorial treaties written in a dead language, a complex amalgam of ancient Elven and lost human dialects. Evie had begun translating it as an intellectual challenge, but now she possessed a far more urgent motivation: to prove that her worth was not measured in musculature or swordsmanship. Meanwhile, on the northern borders, the Shadow Pack intensified its onslaught. Led by the renegade Alpha, Kaelin Grimstone, they had spent the past 2 years meticulously testing the defenses of Ethelgard Keep. King Alaric Thorne's Royal War Council, men of imposing muscle and questionable strategy, clashed fruitlessly, forever proposing the same outdated tactics. "Your Majesty," General Donovan grumbled during a particularly tense War Council chamber meeting, "we require more soldiers in the mountain passes. It is evident they will attack there." "Evident?" Alaric scowled, his gaze sweeping over the map spread across the oak table. "Grim is no fool. If it is evident to us, it is equally so to him." "Then what do you suggest, Your Majesty?" General Reese inquired, a keen beta who often seemed more discerning than his counterparts. Alaric offered no immediate answer. For the first time in his 8-year reign, he felt genuinely adrift. The attacks followed patterns he could not decipher, always remaining one step ahead of his defenses. It was during one of these frustrating sessions that a memorandum arrived, delivered by a nervous page. The parchment was unassuming, signed simply, "The Archivist," yet its contents promised revolution. "Your Majesty," the letter declared in elegant calligraphy, "the maps you employ to plan your defenses are erroneous. They are based upon a forgery crafted a century past during the Shadowed Succession War, designed to weaken the kingdom from within. The true coordinates of the northern passages are these." What followed was a detailed analysis of attack routes, founded not on military assumptions, but on historical weather patterns, prey migration paths, and trade activity records spanning 3 centuries. The archivist had identified 3 critical vulnerabilities that no general had ever considered, all confirmed by documents that had slumbered in the royal archives for decades. "This is impossible," General Donovan murmured, his eyes scanning the coordinates. "These maps have been in use for generations." "Your Majesty," Reese spoke cautiously, "this intelligence, if it proves accurate, it would elucidate why all our strategies have faltered." Alaric faced a stark choice: disregard an anonymous counsel, or concede that his traditional methods had failed. The decision was swiftly rendered by urgency. Reports indicated a massive assault was imminent. "Reorganize the troops," he commanded. "Follow these coordinates." 3 days hence, the Shadow Pack plunged directly into the trap. Grim and 50 of his most formidable warriors were ambushed precisely where the archivist had foretold. The victory was so absolute that the survivors fled beyond the borders, vowing never to return. "I wish to meet this strategist," Alaric declared, elated by the first decisive triumph in months. "Bring the archivist before me." It was General Reese who finally broke the profound silence that had settled upon the chamber. "Your Majesty," he articulated slowly, his gaze sweeping over the astonished faces, "I believe the archivist is Miss Blackthorne. The distinctive calligraphy, the unparalleled historical knowledge, it could only be her." The chamber plunged into an almost sacred silence once more. Alaric felt a dizzying lurch, as if the foundations of his world had crumbled beneath his feet. The woman he had so carelessly dismissed, once scorned as a library mouse, had just salvaged his kingdom with an intellectual prowess his generals never even conceived. "Bring her here," he commanded, his voice a raw, unbidden tremor that betrayed his sought-after composure. When Evie entered the War Council chamber a mere 20 minutes later, clutching a worn leather satchel and clad in her perpetually plain gray dress, the contrast was profoundly stark. While the assembled generals stood resplendent in their gilded uniforms and rigid military postures, she seemed almost ephemeral in her stark simplicity. Yet, a palpable shift defined her bearing, an unyielding confidence never before seen. Her eyes, steadfast and resolute, did not seek Alaric. Instead, she moved with quiet purpose directly to the oversized map, her gaze immediately dissecting the enemy positions marked with small, defiant flags. "The troops are lamentably positioned," she declared, without preamble or hesitation, her slender fingers moving a crucial flag 3 centimeters left. "Should Grimm return on the next new moon, his incursion will undeniably follow this exact route." Her finger then traced a precise path across the ancient parchment. The meticulously kept records from 1642 unequivocally revealed he employed this same antiquated strategy against King Aldrich II. "How can you be so utterly certain?" General Donovan interjected, his voice bristling with irritation at being so thoroughly corrected by a mere archivist. Evie finally met his challenging gaze, and her amber eyes, usually soft, now blazed with a fierce, quiet authority that made the seasoned general instinctively flinch and fall back. "Because I have painstakingly absorbed every entry within our dynastic war journals, General Donovan. Grimm is not demonstrating ingenuity. He is merely replaying antiquated tactics that triumphed 3 centuries past against a king too blind to his own history." Alaric watched the unfolding scene with a fascination bordering on reverence. This was utterly unlike the diffident Omega he had so cruelly dismissed 3 months prior. There was something profoundly fierce, an untamed spirit, in her competence, a bedrock confidence forged from painstaking knowledge and arduous labor. "Miss Blackthorne," he uttered, his voice strangely formal and almost reverent. "You have, beyond measure, saved countless lives. How might the kingdom truly compensate you?" Evie finally turned her gaze fully upon him, and for a fleeting, agonizing moment, Alaric glimpsed the raw, unyielding pain she had concealed within. Yet, when she finally spoke, her voice was a testament to her unshakable resolve, steady and clear. "I require no mere recompense, Your Majesty. I am merely fulfilling the solemn duty." In the tumultuous months that followed, the very dynamics of Ethelgard Keep shifted drastically, irrevocably. Evie became not merely indispensable, but the very linchpin of their survival. Yet she maintained a professional barrier of glacial ice that no one, not even the king, dared breach. She attended war council meetings when summoned, offering invaluable insights that demonstrably saved lives and precious resources. But she steadfastly refused to partake in formal dinners or social gatherings. Alaric Thorne began to discern facets of Evie Blackthorne he had previously overlooked. He marked the deference other officials showed her, the effortless way she could untangle complex disputes with a few well-placed words, the breadth of her knowledge extending beyond military history to encompass economics, diplomacy, and law. During a taut negotiation over trade routes with Duke Julian Vance of the Shadowfen territory, a corpulent man renowned for his financial cunning, Evie was present merely as the official scribe. Yet, when the Duke began to invoke centuries-old traditions of taxation, she interjected with a voice like a whisper of silk. "With utmost respect, Your Grace. Your grandfather implemented these levies in 1823 as a temporary measure during the Brown Blight. The original document explicitly states they were to be revoked after 5 years. That was 72 years ago." The Duke blanched, his florid complexion fading. "That is, I would need to verify that." Fiscal Ledger, Volume 47, page 238, Evie recited from memory, her gaze unwavering. "I can retrieve the original document should Your Grace desire." The negotiation concluded with Ethelgard Keep saving thousands of gold coins annually. Alaric felt a surge of possessive pride so potent it nearly compelled him to snarl at the Duke. The intensity of the emotion, raw and untamed, utterly terrified him. This was more than mere intellectual admiration. There was a primitive, visceral awakening stirring within him, something his inner wolf recognized even as his rational mind fiercely resisted. Her scent, vanilla and aged parchment, began to affect him in profoundly unsettling ways. During council meetings, he would find himself mesmerized by her small hands as she wrote, noting how she would gently nip her lower lip when lost in concentration, how her breath would subtly catch just before she delivered a particularly incisive observation. The stark comparison with his political fiancée had become an inescapable torment. Princess Valora Sterling of the Northern Marches was every inch the Lycan queen expected. Tall, formidable, skilled with both blade and diplomacy. She had arrived at Ethelgard Keep 6 months prior, and their betrothal had been heralded with immense pageantry. It was a brilliant strategic alliance, one that promised to secure peace with the northern territories for a generation. Yet, when Valora spoke, Alaric's thoughts invariably drifted to how Evie might have addressed the very same issue. When Valora displayed her martial prowess, he recalled how Evie had vanquished the Duke of Vance without raising her voice. When Valora's lips met his inner wolf remained conspicuously, unsettlingly silent. The moment of profound revelation descended during the autumn equinox. Evie was toiling late in the royal archives of Ethelgard Keep, a solitary, nearly spent candle casting the only light as she transcribed a document in ancient Elven. Alaric had sought her out to discuss unsettling reports of suspicious activity on the eastern borders. She had not heard him enter. Humming softly, an ancient melody he recognized from the royal archive's musical scrolls. Her quill glided across the parchment with fluid grace. The candle's golden light danced in her chestnut hair, weaving honeyed reflections that spellbound Alaric. Then it happened. A sudden gust flung open the royal archive's heavy windows, extinguishing the candle and plunging them into profound darkness. Evie cried out softly, and instinctively, Alaric moved to shield her, his arms closing around her petite form. For a breathless moment, they remained thus, his formidable frame enveloping hers, her face turned upward in the oppressive darkness. He felt her quickened breath, the fragile pulse at her neck. Then, like a silent peal of thunder, the mate bond snapped into undeniable place. Mate. The single word echoed through Alaric's mind, a clarity that rendered him dizzy with shock and agonizing regret. It could not be. He had spurned his fated companion, had deemed the woman destiny had chosen utterly insufficient. Evie pulled away abruptly, rekindling the candle flame with trembling fingers. "My apologies, Your Majesty," she murmured, avoiding his gaze. "The wind." "Evie," he managed, his voice a raw, unintended rasp. "Did you feel—" "I felt nothing," she retorted swiftly, but a tremor in her voice betrayed the falsehood. "What was it you wished to discuss?" Alaric spent the ensuing days in a burgeoning maelstrom of confusion. The mate bond, once acknowledged, could not be banished. Each glimpse of Evie ignited a primitive roar within his inner wolf, demanding he claim her, mark her, protect her. Yet, she maintained her professional distance with a resolve that bordered on cruel, as if nothing had irrevocably shifted. Destiny, however, harbored its own intricate designs. Princess Valora Sterling, no foolish woman, began to discern the fractured attention of her betrothed. During a particularly lavish state dinner, she observed Alaric's gaze drift toward the slight scribe meticulously documenting the official proceedings at the room's periphery. "She is quite competent," Valora remarked with an air of casual indifference, carving her lamb with chilling precision. "The royal archivist." "Evie is exceedingly valuable to the kingdom," Alaric replied, attempting to imbue his tone with nonchalance. "I am certain of it." Valora took a slow sip of wine, her emerald eyes dissecting his features. It would be a pity if anything were to befall her. A cold, subtle threat in her delivery sharpened Alaric's alpha instincts. What do you mean? Nothing specific, Valora smiled, though no warmth touched her chilling expression. Merely that indispensable people sometimes prove inconvenient. 3 weeks later, during the winter solstice, Valora's threat materialized. Vital documents regarding the royal lineage vanished from the castle's most secure archives. They were parchments that confirmed the legitimacy of the Thorn dynasty, without which any rival claimant could challenge Alaric's right to the throne. The evidence implicating Evie appeared with suspicious convenience. A vial of iron gall ink found in her chambers, traces of her elegant calligraphy on notes discussing the document's value for foreign buyers, and witnesses who saw her conversing with the ambassador of the Western Canyons about sensitive historical matters. "It's impossible," General Reese stated during the emergency meeting. "Miss Blackthorne has dedicated her life to protecting these archives." "The evidence is clear," Valora countered, who had insisted on participating in the investigation as the future queen. She had access, knowledge, and apparently, financial motivation. Alaric felt as though he was being torn apart from within. His rational mind told him the evidence was compelling, but his inner wolf howled that it was impossible. Evie would never betray Ethelgard Keep. She loved this place more than anyone. But there was another complication: jealousy. He had seen Evie conversing with the Westmarchian ambassador, had noticed how the man looked at her with obvious admiration. The possibility that she might be interested in another man, even if only professionally, ignited a possessive fury that clouded his judgment. "Arrest her," he finally commanded, the words splintering like shards of glass. "The North Spire dungeon, provisional detention until trial." What he did not see was the flicker of triumph that swiftly crossed Valora's face. The North Spire dungeon was the bleakest place in the keep, reserved for high-security prisoners. Evie's cell was a circular stone chamber with a single barred window that offered a view of the distant, snow-capped mountain peaks. It was there she spent the longest days of her life, not because she feared for her innocence, but because she had uncovered something terrible. The stolen documents were not merely about lineage. They held the key to a secret that could destroy the kingdom. The Thorn dynasty was legitimate, but only so long as it possessed the Stone of the First Howl, an ancient artifact that had been lost 200 years prior. Without it, any challenger with a drop of true Lycan blood could legitimately claim the throne. Evie knew where the stone lay. She had spent years deciphering cryptic references in ancient texts, following clues that led to the ancestral catacombs beneath the keep. But now, imprisoned and discredited, she could share this information with no one. It was during her third night in the North Spire dungeon that chaos erupted. Alarm bells began to toll throughout Ethelgard Keep, echoing from the stone walls like screams of agony. Through her small window, Evie could discern flames rising in Ethelgard Township. The civil war had begun. Princess Valora Sterling had utilized the stolen documents precisely as she had planned. She had disseminated them amongst the disaffected houses, revealing that Alaric's lineage was questionable without the lost stone of the First Howl. With the promise that she could locate the artifact and legitimize a new king, preferably her own brother, she had forged an impressive coalition of rebels. The keep was being assailed from all sides. Alaric found himself fighting for his very life in the same corridors he had ruled for 8 years. His loyal guards were being overwhelmed by superior numbers and the stark advantage of surprise. It was then that a searing realization pierced through him. Amidst all the chaos, only one person truly mattered. Not Valora, who had conveniently vanished before the assault. Not his throne or his crown. Evie. Racing through the burning corridors with a despair he had never known, Alaric directed his frantic steps toward the North Spire dungeon. His raiments were torn. Blood, both his own and his enemies', stained his hands. Yet only one desperate thought consumed his mind. Reaching her. He found the cell empty. "No," he rasped, falling to his knees before the gaping door. The bars had been severed with surgical precision, a feat requiring an intimate knowledge of medieval metallurgy that only one with specialized education would possess. Evie had not waited to be saved. Employing her encyclopedic knowledge of the keep's architecture, blueprints she had meticulously studied from 14th century construction documents, she had escaped through service passages that had existed within the walls since its original inception. But she had not fled for her own salvation. As Alaric frantically sought her amidst the blazing corridors, Evie moved through the ancestral catacombs like a determined phantom. The crypts were the most perilous place in the Silverwood Kingdom, rife with arcane traps guarding the remains of the first Lycan kings. Yet, she had memorized every peril, every safe passage, every word of power requisite to traverse them. The stone of the first howl lay precisely where the ancient texts indicated, in a secret chamber behind King Lysander's tomb, shielded by enchantments that could only be disarmed by one who knew the ancestral oath in the forgotten tongue. Evie was kneeling before the crystal altar when she perceived footsteps echoing within the catacombs behind her. They were not the cautious steps of one attempting stealth. They were the heavy, desperate strides of someone heedless of all danger. "Evie!" King Alaric Thorne's voice echoed through the stone chambers, laden with both profound relief and surging terror. He had tracked her by scent, following the lingering trace of vanilla and old books that his inner wolf recognized above all other aromas, a thread woven into his very soul. "Do not approach," she cried, not turning. "The traps are still active." But then other footsteps joined his, heavier, more numerous. The rebels, too, had discovered her location. "There's the traitor," snarled a voice Evie recognized as Lord Elias Stonebrooks, one of the nobles who had cast his lot with the rebellion. And our precious stone. What ensued was a brutal skirmish within the claustrophobic confines of the ancestral catacombs. King Alaric fought like a maddened wolf, a primal force protecting Evie as she worked desperately to activate the stone of the first howl. But the enemies were too many, and the constricted space worked against his formidable combat skills. It was Evie who turned the tide of the desperate battle. Shouting precise instructions regarding the catacomb's ancient structure, she guided Alaric to strike specific pillars, which would cause the ceiling to collapse only upon their foes, weaponizing her encyclopedic architectural knowledge. "The pillar with the scarlet runes!" she cried, ducking a sword blow. "3 strikes at its base!" Alaric obeyed without question, placing his absolute trust in her. The pillar groaned, then cracked, and a section of the ceiling plummeted, crushing 2 attackers and forging a vital barrier between them and the remaining rebels. In the searing heat of battle, with ancient dust swirling through the air and the tang of blood mingling with the scent of primordial magic, something profound shifted between them. The mate bond, which had merely slumbered, exploded into vibrant life, undeniable and utterly overwhelming. Alaric felt each of Evie's hurts as if they were his own, and she, in turn, channeled his formidable strength to transcend her physical limitations. Working in flawless synchronization, they vanquished the last of their assailants. Alaric, wounded and profoundly exhausted, leaned against the cold stone wall, his gaze fixed on Evie as she approached the stone of the first howl. The artifact was smaller than he had envisioned, fist-sized, crafted from obsidian crystal that pulsed with an inner golden light. It hung suspended above a white marble altar, protected by runes that glowed with an ominous, watchful power. Evie did not immediately touch the stone. Instead, she began to recite words in a language Alaric did not recognize, the ancient Elven she had spent years meticulously learning. Her voice resonated through the chambers with an authority that caused the very air to vibrate. The stone responded, its light intensifying until the entire crypt was bathed in a supernatural golden radiance. When Evie finally grasped it, a wave of ancestral power surged through the catacombs, spiraling upwards through the castle corridors and beyond. Every Lycan within a radius of miles felt the stone's activation. The rebels still fighting in Ethelgard Keep above found themselves suddenly weakened, as if an unseen force were siphoning their vitality. It was the potent power of the first Lycan kings, acknowledging and legitimizing the true ruler. "It is yours," Evie said, offering the stone of the first howl to Alaric with trembling hands. "This proves your lineage against any challenger." Alaric took the artifact, yet his eyes never departed from her countenance. "No," he murmured softly. "You activated it. You saved the kingdom. You—" "Do not speak," Evie interrupted, recoiling as he attempted to draw near. "Please, do not speak." But there was a quality in her tone that halted him. It was not rejection, it was anguish. A profound ancient sorrow that transcended the indignity he had inflicted upon her. "Evie," he uttered with carefully measured words, "what ails you?" It was then that she unveiled the truth she had harbored for an entire year. "I always knew," she whispered, her words resonating amidst the ancient stones. "From the very first day, from the moment you rejected me upon the obsidian throne, I knew we were mates." Alaric's world crumbled around him. "What? How? Did you deem me witless?" Evie's voice acquired a timbre of fury he had never before witnessed. "Did you truly believe I would spend 5 years enamored with you and fail to recognize the mate bond when it manifested?" "I felt it, Alaric. I felt it the precise moment you declared I would never be enough for you." "Then why?" "Because I refused to compel you into accepting me out of obligation." Tears finally began their slow descent upon her cheeks. "Because I yearned to be chosen, not merely endured because destiny had so decreed." Alaric felt as though he had received a visceral blow to his very being. "Evie, do you wish to comprehend how I managed to labor by your side for all these months?" She laughed, a brittle, bitter sound. "Aconite teas, thrice a day, every day for an entire year. Just enough to dull the mate bond without extinguishing my life." The stark horror in her voice struck him like a lightning bolt. Aconite was poison to Lycans. Even in minute doses, it wrought intense physical agony. She had deliberately poisoned herself daily, merely to endure his presence without succumbing. "You were destroying yourself," he whispered, utterly disbelieving. "The physical torment was preferable to the emotional," she stated simply. "At least I possessed some measure of control over it." Alaric fell to his knees before her, utterly devastated by the sheer magnitude of the suffering he had inadvertently caused. The woman he had once deemed insufficient had endured daily physical agony merely to continue serving a kingdom that disrespected her, a king who had so cruelly rejected her. "I did not know," he uttered, his voice fractured with raw emotion. "Evie, I swear I did not know." "I know." She knelt to meet his gaze, her small hands gently gracing his scarred face. "You were never cruel with intent, merely blind. How can I mend this?" Evie Blackthorne studied him for a long moment, and he could see the years of pain and solitude etched deep within her eyes. "You cannot," she finally said, her voice a fragile whisper. "Some things cannot be mended, only overcome." They remained there in the ancient ancestral catacombs, two broken hearts striving to find a path back to one another, while the chaotic echoes of civil war slowly resolved themselves on the floors above. The weeks that followed proved to be the most arduous of Alaric's life. The rebellion was swiftly quelled once the stone of the first howl had proven his legitimacy, yet the emotional scars, profound and insidious, lingered. Princess Valora Sterling of the Northern Marches had fled amidst the confusion, leaving behind only a scathing letter confessing her treachery and declaring her unwavering intent to witness Ethelgard Keep's eventual downfall. Evie was, of course, exonerated of all charges, but the delicate relationship between them remained in a painful, undefined territory. She returned to her duties within the royal archives. Yet something fundamental had irrevocably shifted. A profound sorrow now resided in her eyes, a melancholy acceptance that some wounds were simply too deep to ever fully heal. Alaric did not immediately return to the obsidian throne. Instead, he did something that astonished the entire Silverwood Kingdom. He went to the royal archives. Every morning he appeared, books tucked beneath his arm. Not military treatises or political documents, but the very texts Evie cherished. Ancient elven poetry, treatises of philosophy, histories of long-forgotten kings. He would settle at a table near hers, reading in silence, occasionally posing questions about passages he did not comprehend. "Why?" Evie asked during the second week, finally breaking the tense silence that had settled between them like a shroud. "Because I want to understand," he replied simply, his gaze unwavering. "I want to see the world through your eyes. I want to know the woman who saved my kingdom with knowledge I once disdained." It was not an easy process. Alaric had spent his entire life valuing strength over intellect, action over reflection. To learn to appreciate the subtlety of an ancient verse, or the elegant precision of a diplomatic strategy, required him to deconstruct centuries of ingrained Lycan prejudice. But he persisted. He read of kings who ruled with wisdom rather than might, of queens who conquered hearts instead of territories. He studied the history of his own kingdom through the eyes of scholars instead of soldiers, discovering nuances his military tutors had never deigned to mention. "You are changing," Evie observed one day, finding him engrossed in a text on conflict mediation through cultural understanding. "I am trying," he said, lifting his eyes to meet hers. "I am trying to become worthy of you." Evie felt her heart clench. "Alaric, I know I cannot undo what I said," he continued. "I cannot erase the pain I caused, or the months you spent poisoning yourself because of me. But I can try to become the man you deserve." Progress was slow, and at times agonizing. There were days when the mate bond pulsed between them like an open wound, a stark reminder of what could have been if he had not been so utterly blind. There were nights when Alaric awoke screaming, having dreamt of Evie slowly dying due to aconite while he remained oblivious to her suffering. But there were also moments of burgeoning hope. Conversations about books often extended late into the night. Genuine smiles flickered when he demonstrated true interest in something she considered vital. The day he genuinely asked for her opinion on a new law and truly incorporated her astute suggestions, instead of merely listening politely, marked a pivotal shift. The turning point arrived 3 months later, during a particularly tense Royal Council session. A group from the Merchant Guild was protesting new trade regulations, vehemently claiming the changes were unjust and economically destructive. "Your Majesty," stated Alden Hayes, the robust leader of the merchants, "these new laws will destroy our businesses. We implore you to reconsider." Alaric studied the documents before him, but instead of making a unilateral decision as he would have in the past, he turned to Evie. "What is your analysis, Miss Blackthorne?" Evie rose, carrying a folder she had meticulously prepared for the meeting. "The merchants' concerns are certainly valid," she affirmed, "but there are also historical factors to consider with careful thought." She proceeded to explain how similar regulations had been implemented 200 years before during a comparable economic crisis, showing both the long-term benefits and the short-term transitional difficulties. She suggested modifications that would address the immediate concerns of the merchants while maintaining the long-term objectives of the new legislation. "Proposal accepted," Alaric declared when she finished. "General Reese, work diligently with Miss Blackthorne to implement these modifications." It was after the meeting, when they were alone in the royal archives, that Evie finally spoke the words that had been trapped in her throat for months. A fragile release. "You are truly trying." "I was always trying," Alaric replied softly, a profound revelation in his tone. "I was just trying the wrong things." Evie studied him for a long moment, observing the subtle changes etched upon his face. There were lines of weariness that had not existed before, but also a profound gentleness in his eyes that she had never seen. The arrogant man who had rejected her had evolved into something far more complex, still strong, but profoundly tempered by humility and wisdom hard-won. "The aconite," she said abruptly, the word a sudden confession. "What?" he breathed. "I stopped taking it 2 weeks ago." Alaric felt his heart stop cold. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I needed to be certain." Evie drew closer to him, her small hands trembling slightly. "I needed to be certain that my feelings were real, not merely the mate bond speaking." "And are they?" Instead of replying with words, Evie drew even closer, allowing Alaric to witness the golden shimmer that began to bloom in her eyes, the undeniable sign that she no longer battled against the mate bond. "I still love you," she whispered. "Despite everything, I still love you. But I also love myself now. And I will not accept less than I deserve." "What do you deserve?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. "Respect, partnership, a man who sees me as an equal, not as an inferior." Her eyes met his. "Someone who chooses to stay, not who is compelled by fate." "I choose you," Alaric declared without hesitation. "Not because we are mates, but because you are extraordinary. Because your mind is a weapon mightier than any blade. Because you saved my kingdom and my very soul. I choose you, Evelyn Blackthorne, every single day." The kiss that followed transcended anything either of them had ever known. It was not merely physical ardor or the gratification of the mate bond. It was the mutual recognition of two souls forged through fire and emerged utterly transformed. When they finally parted, Evie's touch upon his cheek was feather light. "We have much work ahead of us," she stated. "This kingdom requires change, and I shall not be a mere figurehead queen." "I would expect nothing less of you," Alaric countered with a soft smile. "But first..." He retrieved a document from his desk, extending it towards her. It was a royal decree, penned in his own elegant calligraphy, establishing the position of royal archivist as equivalent to that of supreme general within the governing council. "This decree elevates you as my equal in all decisions of the kingdom," he explained, his gaze unwavering. "Not as my consort, but as my partner." Evie read the document, tears blurring the ornate script. "Alaric, I once said you would never be enough for me," he reiterated, his hands enveloping hers with a reverence that starkly contrasted his former arrogance. "I was right. You are too much for me. It is I who will spend the rest of my life striving to be enough for you." For the first time in over a year, Evie allowed her eyes to blaze fully golden, embracing not merely the mate bond, but the profound partnership they had painstakingly forged through pain, growth, and an abiding, true love. Beyond the royal archives, the ceaseless rain had finally ceased. The first sunbeams in weeks pierced the Gothic stained glass windows, painting vibrant, kaleidoscopic patterns across the ancient bookshelves that had borne witness to their arduous journey, from searing rejection to profound redemption. The Silverwood Kingdom had found not merely its queen, but a new epic of leadership that cherished wisdom as much as strength, diplomacy as much as war, and the transformative power of a love that blossoms brightest when tempered by fire. If the tender ache of a scorned Omega's journey, who, through the unyielding fire of her intellect, not only redeemed her Silverwood Kingdom from the precipice of ruin, but forged an unbreakable bond of true love with the Alpha King, who, through a humbling crucible, came to revere her sagacity above all earthly might, has resonated within your soul. Then yield to the beckoning call. Embrace the unfolding destiny, for more poignant sagas of Lycan kings and the indomitable souls destined to challenge and transform them await. Let the echoing chime of discovery guide your path, ensuring you never miss a tale born of the transformative alchemy of love, the myriad manifestations of true strength, and the profound, redemptive choice of forging one's own destiny, even when shadowed by fate's decrees. Remember, the truest might does not reside in the formidable claw or the gleaming fang, but in the harmonious symphony of kindred hearts and brilliant minds, bound in unyielding purpose.